I want to thank my colleagues, Sue Williams-Seo and others, who have raised the issue of community outcomes, Sir. And I want to make some specific comments about clauses 4 and 12. And the consequence of clause 4 is to restrict community outcomes, the very important goals that are high-level goals that are set in the long-term plans of local authorities. It's to restrict those things to only to things that the council itself can deliver. And the government justifies this move as part of its streamlining efforts in the bill. But the problem here, sir, is that it's important to many of our communities that they are able to call on their councils and their local authorities to take leadership in tackling some of the most important issues in their community, even if the council itself cannot deliver the whole solution. But in many cases here, and I want to give you a couple of examples, the councils can, through leadership, through advocacy and through coordination, can help the community respond to community demand to tackle some of these big problems. Now, one example that I can think of, sir, is the failure of infrastructure in Auckland. We've had an ongoing series of problems with infrastructure failure with the electricity network. And most recently, I think in the summer of 2008, we had a problem with the Otahuhu substation, and the cable went down. The city was without electricity for some time. This is a major issue affecting the economic viability of our city. The people of Auckland expect their local authorities to help to sort that problem out. It's not only a problem for central government. They expect questions about infrastructure are so important to the success of the city and of those communities that they would expect the councils to take a leadership role in ensuring that there's a timely and adequate response to that problem. One of the other issues that many councils take up is the issue of community safety. And I think there's a real mood out there in the country at the moment of concern about things like alcohol consumption, binge drinking, crime on our streets, the social impact of gambling, and boy races. Now, in all of these things that are matters of real concern to our communities, councils don't necessarily have the ability to solve the problem and deliver the solutions, but people expect their elected representatives to provide leadership, to respond to their concerns and to take up those matters. Now, there's no reason, sir, that the community can't require that those pressing problems should be identified as the high-level goals or community outcomes in the long-term plan. That is an entirely reasonable part of our democratic process, and unfortunately this bill will take that away and apply an unduly narrow approach by saying that community outcomes can only be the things that the council itself can deliver. And I think that is a real shame and a real problem with this bill. And we're tabling an SOP in my name that would omit this provision and continue to allow communities to identify their high-level goals and not be restricted in this way. The other thing that I want to say about the community outcomes relates to clause 12, and we acknowledge that the current process in the legislation is a little bit too prescriptive in setting out the process by which councils identify their community outcomes. We agree that the process is too heavy and it could be lightened up, but the effect of clause 12, sir, is to say that is to completely remove any principle-based approach for saying how councils should identify their community outcomes. Under this bill, a council could just sit down around the table themselves and just say, and pull community outcomes out of the air and say that the high-level goals for the long-term plan will be whatever pops into their head on the day. There is no requirement in here that they should have a consultation process with their community, that they should give their citizens the right to be part of a discussion transparently and openly in identifying community outcomes. So while we acknowledge the current law is too prescriptive, we believe that there should be some principle-based requirement that citizens should be involved in the development of the process of community outcomes. Otherwise, there are plenty of councils who could say, well, this is what we think, this is what someone said to me in the supermarket the other day or in the dairy, or one of their funders or donors or mates or fellow boards of director or whatever. They can basically make it up and set the community outcomes in a way that it would be undemocratic and shutting people out of the democratic process.
Mr. Chairman.